IP is, of course, the convergence of the PSTN and the internet. What happened before was the PSTN was finally made relatively secure. The number of people who could actively exploit it was very, very small, and it was a walled garden. And then the internet happened, and the PSTN was still pretty much okay, and then voice over IP happened, and the PSTN is complete shit now, and it's going to get completely trashed because all of the telcos out there and all of these like fly-by-night voice over IP companies are just plugging boxes in willy-nilly without giving a shit about what they actually mean in terms of security. And that means for the rest of us, VoIP freaking is here. Thank you. Okay. Are there any questions? Are there any answers? Are there any jokes?
Do we actually hijack it like phone call?
Oh yeah.
Do we have to hijack the TCP connection as well?
It's a UDP connection. The question was, to hijack a phone call, do you have to hijack the TCP connection as well? The answer is no, because it's not a TCP connection, it's a UDP connection. You can in some regards. Depends on which technique you use. So if you want to hijack fully, one way would be to DOS the other guy offline and then just spoof his stuff to inject. The much simpler way is to send a invite or a new connection to the person that you're trying to, like the target, not the person you're trying to impersonate, right? So the person that you're trying to hijack, you don't need to knock them offline. You simply need to tell the person that they're talking to that they should no longer talk to this IP, they should talk to this IP, right? And they will happily do that without even noticing it. Connected over here, let's resync and keep going. So one of the cool things that happens with that actually is you're supposed to, when you change your IP address, your SSRC, the session ID number, is supposed to change. And if it doesn't change, that's an error, which means that the number of things that you need to guess is now reduced to a 16-bit digit, which can be accurate to within about 256, and a timestamp, which you can get accurate to within a couple of minutes, just by like pinging one of the boxes. You don't even need to flood. They tend to won't check that the IP address and the SDP IP address are correct. So you can say like spoof, flood, and spoof, and you won't have the firewall drop you because they're badly implemented. Yes, you can basically send within your SDP packet. You can send your IP address, but you can spoof someone else's UDP address. Sorry, with the UDP packet at the IP layer, you can spoof, and it will do. It's like delta is based on IP address rather than on like anything else, so you won't get dropped. Yes, cool. I think that's it for time. So unless there's any other questions, okay, thank you.
Are you aware of any compliance tests or validation tools, especially for the SIP protocol, that are in development or actually probably in use?
There are actually some open source tools, and I know that there's commercial tools out there, but they don't look at things like, are you properly random, or are you doing validation to make sure that you're not looking at a completely insane packet. They tend to be doing things like, does your parser work properly? So can you parse a very, very garbled packet? Or can you handle a very, very large volume of packets? Because these tools are developed for telcos who worry about handling millions of users rather than for people who are worried about like their boxes being hijacked. So the software that I've had a chance to look at has not done specific security stuff as relates to the topics I've talked about here. It's done security stuff in terms of, can I send you complete garbage and will you treat it as a SIP packet, yes or no? And then it will say, hey, your parser doesn't properly handle 3 carriage returns in a row. And that's boring.
Okay, at least it's a start. And can you say something about the inter-asterisk protocol and
the IAX?
The specific role?
Yeah, like the thing is, I don't think like IAX is the asterisk developed protocol for voice over IP. I don't know too much about it. I know that one of the cool things you can do with it is you can tunnel it over SSH. So what we do when we try and set up secure voice over IP calls is we have an asterisk box in a server on the internet. We run asterisk boxes locally, and then we do SSH tunnels, and we set up IAX over the SSH tunnels. And then we know that at the very least, no one's going to be able to get through the encryption. There's latency problems, but we're willing to deal with that as a trade-off. I don't know if average users are. In terms of IAX specifically, I don't know too much about it. I do know that there are problems with Asterisk. I do know that the people who have access to those particular problems are quite concerned about making them public because there's a lot of Asterisk boxes now being rolled out in valuable places, and I know bad people who like to do bad things. So they're hanging on to that information. And that said, most of the carrier-grade equipment is not Asterisk. Asterisk is for like the also-rans, I guess. They're for like the little toy people. They're for like people like us who like to play at home. If you're a carrier and you're dropping a couple of $1 million on a box, you really don't want to get Linux running Asterisk. Right? You want to get something with a big brand name on the side that you can go and sue later when it doesn't work. So I'm not sure that IIX is going.
I mean, from what I know from SIP, I mean, SIP is, it's not only no security, it's totally broken by design because it doesn't really like embed ports in the data, so it's totally unsuitable for firewalls in general. It doesn't really work with NAT, and it's a complete mess.
Oh yeah, yep. And it's being rolled out everywhere. I mean,
don't use it.
Yeah, no, like
it's dangerous.
Yeah, no, SIP is quite bad. It requires UDP ports. It doesn't work well with NAT. That's why the proxies were developed, and then they found out that they had to make the proxies the NAT devices, which means that you then have someone trying to develop voice over IP technology and good NAT technology. And there's only a limited number of people in the world who can do one of either, and they tend not to be the same person, and they tend not to be in the same teams or companies. So it's a complete mess. And then, of course, RTP itself has to randomly assign a new port number, which, again, doesn't work very well with NAT. So if you've got several people going through, you end up doing like all sorts of very, very ugly things. So voice over IP technology does not play nicely with firewalls. It doesn't play nicely with large corporations. It should be used internally, probably, or it should be used in a secure way. And since no one's figured out what that secure way is, don't use it. All right. Anything else? No? Cool, we're done.